I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Hey, Jack, I feel like I'm flying.
You want to take it from the story, just so we all know where we are?
Somewhere in the middle of Titanic, there is a single frame that sat on movie screens, VHS tapes, DVDs, and eventually streaming platforms for almost 3 decades before anyone pointed it out publicly. Millions of people watched this scene without blinking. It took a frame-by-frame breakdown, decades after the film's original release, for fans to finally catch it. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Stick around, because we're counting down 20 of the wildest bloopers, continuity slips, and historical mistakes hidden inside this movie, and we're saving the one nobody caught for nearly 30 years for the very end. Before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and drop a comment letting us know which Titanic moment you think holds up best under scrutiny. Now, let's dive in. James Cameron's production team rebuilt the Titanic's grand staircase for the film, and it's one of the most photographed sets ever constructed for a movie. It's gorgeous, sweeping, and instantly recognizable. The problem is that it isn't a true copy of the real staircase. The proportions were altered to look more dramatic on camera, and the glass dome above it doesn't match the actual skylight design documented in the ship's original blueprints. It's close enough to fool most viewers, but historians who've studied the original White Star Line drawings have pointed out the differences for years. The real Titanic had 4 funnels, but only 3 were functional and actually vented smoke from the boilers. The 4th was mostly there for symmetry and to make the ship look more powerful and balanced from a distance. In the film, all 4 stacks are shown working as if they're equally essential to the ship's power. It's a small detail, but it changes the way the ship's engineering is presented to the audience. At the very beginning of the film, the harbor is packed with people waving the ship off, hats in the air, handkerchiefs waving, a wall of noise and motion. Then, just a few shots later, in a different wide angle of the ship pulling away, that same dock looks strangely quiet. The crowd has thinned out to almost nothing. It's likely the result of combining footage from different shooting setups, since the wide establishing shots of the ship were handled separately from the crowd sequences. Once you notice the missing people, that emotional farewell moment loses a little of its punch. Early in the film, Jack walks into the first-class section of the ship for the first time, and the camera follows his point of view through a set of polished glass doors. It's meant to feel like we're seeing the ship's luxury through his eyes. But if you slow the footage down and look closely at the glass, there's a faint silhouette that doesn't belong, a crew member holding filming equipment, caught in the reflection for a split second. It's the kind of mistake that's incredibly easy to miss on a television screen, but impossible to unsee once you know where to look. Throughout the film, Rose's signature beauty mark shifts position depending on the scene. Sometimes it sits on her right cheek. In other shots, it's clearly on the left. This kind of inconsistency usually happens when footage gets flipped horizontally during editing, which is a common technique used to help match camera angles or improve the flow between cuts. Nobody flipping the footage was thinking about continuity for a tiny facial detail, but once you start tracking it across the film, it becomes strangely noticeable. In the scene many fans consider the emotional centerpiece of the film, Jack sketching Rose, there's a small moment right before Rose enters the room. Watch closely, and you'll catch a hand pulling the door open from the inside, just out of frame, before she steps through. It's almost certainly a crew member assisting with blocking who wasn't quite fast enough to disappear before the camera rolled. It's subtle, but it turns one of the movie's most intimate entrances into an accidental behind-the-scenes cameo. During the flooding scene where Rose swings an axe to free Jack from a pair of handcuffs, eagle-eyed viewers have pointed out that Jack's suspenders disappear and reappear between cuts. The likely explanation is a stunt double stepping in for the more physically demanding parts of the sequence, with a wardrobe detail that didn't get matched perfectly between takes. It's a minor slip, but continuity errors involving something as simple as suspenders are exactly the kind of thing obsessive rewatchers live for. Speaking of that same rescue scene, watch the axe itself as Rose brings it down to break the chain. For safety reasons, prop axes used in stunt work are often made from flexible rubber rather than real metal, and in this shot, the head of the axe visibly flexes on impact. It's a necessary safety choice for the people on set, but it briefly turns a tense, life-or-death moment into something that looks a little more like a toy. Just before that same rescue, Rose breaks the glass on an emergency case to grab the axe inside. Moments later, in a following shot, a noticeable portion of that same glass appears intact again, with no sound of it shattering a second time and no visible replacement happening on screen. It's a classic case of shots from different takes getting stitched together in the edit, and it's one of those details that becomes very hard to ignore once you've spotted it. During one of the ship's flooding sequences, the same set of windows appears to burst in two different orders across two different shots. In one angle, the water crashes through the windows moving one way. In another angle of the same section of hallway, the order is different. Because these disaster sequences were often shot multiple times to capture the most dramatic possible footage, editors sometimes pulled together the best individual pieces from different takes rather than a single continuous version, and in this case, the continuity didn't quite line up. In the film's final act, as Jack is in the freezing water, there's a shot where his face is clean and simply wet. In the very next angle, ice has visibly formed around his nose. Cold water scenes like this are notoriously difficult to shoot, often stretched across multiple filming days with changing makeup and effects work, and small inconsistencies like this are common. It doesn't take away from the emotional weight of the scene, but it's a noticeable jump once you're looking for it. During the confrontation between Rose and Cal, there's a quick moment where stage blood is visible on Cal's hand just before Rose's punch actually lands. Then, a beat later, he wipes his hand across his face as though the hit just happened. It's the kind of small prop and timing mismatch that's easy to miss in real time but obvious once the scene is paused and studied frame by frame. As crew members search the flooding ship for Jack and Rose, they use flashlights with a crisp, bright white beam. That kind of clean white light is closer to what modern LED flashlights produce. In 1912, handheld lights would have relied on early incandescent or carbon filament bulbs, giving off a warmer, dimmer, more yellow-toned glow. It's a small technical detail, but it's the kind of thing that period accuracy enthusiasts have pointed out for years. During a first-class dinner scene, Rose makes a sharp comment referencing Sigmund Freud and his theories connecting size and masculinity, aimed directly at the pompous Bruce Ismay. It's a clever, cutting line, but the specific ideas she's referencing hadn't been published by Freud at the time the Titanic sailed. The line works beautifully as characterization, giving Rose a sharp, modern wit, but it's technically anachronistic for 1912. Rose's bold red lipstick is part of her visual identity throughout the film, but it doesn't quite match the beauty standards of the era. In the early 1910s, makeup, especially something as bold as red lipstick, was associated with performers and considered inappropriate for women of Rose's social standing. Red lipstick didn't become a mainstream fashion statement until the flapper culture of the 1920s took hold. It's a stylistic choice that helps Rose visually stand out as a rebel, even if it doesn't line up with the actual fashion norms of high society at the time. Near the end of the film, Rose is shown looking at a vividly green Statue of Liberty as a symbol of hope and a new beginning. In reality, the statue's copper surface was still in the middle of oxidizing in 1912, decades after its installation in the 1880s. Photographs from that era show a patchy, streaked, brownish-green surface rather than the uniform, deep green color most people associate with the statue today. The fully green look audiences expect wasn't complete until years after the Titanic sank. As emotionally satisfying as Jack and Rose's romance is, the real Titanic's design would have made their relationship extremely unlikely. Class separation on the ship wasn't just a social custom, it was physically built into the architecture. First class, second class, and third class passengers used different staircases, different dining rooms, and different decks, and access between them was tightly restricted. Jack winning a third-class ticket in a card game is plausible, but the idea of him freely wandering into first-class spaces, dancing at elite parties, and sketching in private cabins stretches well past what the ship's actual layout would have allowed. In one of the film's quieter emotional scenes, Jack talks Rose down from the ship's railing by describing a memory of ice fishing on Lake Wissota. It's a warm, grounding story, except Lake Wissota is a man-made reservoir that wasn't created until several years after the Titanic sank, when a dam was built on the Chippewa River in Wisconsin. In 1912, the Lake Jack references simply didn't exist. Whether it was an oversight by the writers or just a small forgivable detail in an otherwise carefully researched script, it's one of the more surprising anachronisms hiding in plain sight. Rose shows off a small art collection in her cabin, including a Picasso piece she describes with genuine admiration, framing herself as someone drawn to bold, modern ideas rather than stale tradition. The specific painting referenced in the film wasn't actually completed and publicly known until several years after the Titanic sank. In 1912, Picasso was still in the earlier stages of developing the style associated with that later work. It's a great character detail for establishing Rose as forward-thinking, but the actual artwork wouldn't have been available for her to own at the time. Now for the one we've been building toward. Deep in the sketching scene between Jack and Rose, the drawing itself tells two different stories depending on which shot you're watching. When Jack first puts pencil to paper on camera, the very first stroke he draws is thick, heavy, and deliberate. But when the camera later shows the completed sketch in full, that same bold opening line is nowhere to be found. In its place is a much finer, more delicate set of strokes, clearly the work of a different, more practiced hand. Here's what actually happened. The sketch shown as Jack's finished work in the film wasn't drawn in real time by the actor on camera. It was created separately by a professional artist specifically for the production, then swapped in for the close-up shots of the completed drawing. The heavier opening line viewers see Leonardo DiCaprio draw on screen was simply part of the performance, convincing in the moment, but never actually connected to the polished sketch that appears later in the film. 4 years, this passed by almost completely unnoticed, buried inside one of the most watched and re-watched scenes in movie history. It wasn't until fans began doing detailed side-by-side, frame-by-frame comparisons of the drawing in its early and final states, nearly 3 decades after the film's original release, that the mismatch started getting real attention online. It's a small detail, hidden inside a massive, emotionally iconic scene, and it's proof that even a film as meticulously crafted as Titanic has secrets that can hide in plain sight for a very long time. So, out of everything we covered today, which blooper surprised you the most? Was it the vanishing crowd at the dock, the anachronistic lipstick, the lake that didn't exist, or that final sketching secret that stayed hidden for nearly 3 decades? Movies like this remind us that no production, no matter how big the budget or how legendary the director, is ever truly perfect, and sometimes that's part of what makes rewatching a classic so much fun. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more deep dives into the movies you thought you already knew inside and out, and drop a comment below with the detail you're going to be looking for the next time you watch Titanic. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.